Greetings, seekers of the unseen. Welcome. Tonight we delve into the shadows where reality frays, exploring a question that has haunted humankind for centuries. Can the powers that dwell beyond our sight, the Jinn, be controlled by mortal hands? And if so, what terrible price must be paid? Ambition, the insatiable desire for power, for knowledge, for wealth obtained without the drudgery of time and effort. It drives many down forbidden paths, seeking shortcuts through the supernatural. Some, foolishly perhaps, believe they can command beings of immense power, creatures born of smokeless fire, to fulfill their every whim. There exists a perilous ritual, whispered about in hushed tones, known by various names but often involving a grueling test of will. One such rite demands 40 nights of unbroken concentration, a solitary vigil known as the binding. It is believed that if one successfully completes this ordeal, a Jinn can be bound to their service. This process typically requires absolute isolation, a locked room where no disturbance can penetrate, or perhaps more chillingly, the unnerving silence of a desolate graveyard. It is, in essence, a form of intense, dark meditation. For 40 consecutive nights, the practitioner must remain within a protective circle, often inscribed with sacred verses meant to ward off malevolent forces. This circle, this ward, is their only sanctuary. Should they endure, the legends claim, on the 41st day, a Jinn will become their unwilling servant, bound to obey, but only, it is cautioned, for righteous tasks. Attempting to command a Jinn for nefarious purposes invites only ruin upon oneself. And it is this dangerous path that brings us to the story of Joseph, a man from a quiet American town. Joseph was, by all accounts, a devout man. He observed his daily prayers diligently and dedicated his time to teaching the Holy Scriptures to the neighborhood children. Life proceeded uneventfully, until one day, a new child joined his class. This boy was different. There was an intensity about him, a strange maturity in his eyes that set him apart. Joseph found himself inexplicably drawn to the child, observing him closely. The unsettling suspicion began to form, hardening into certainty within days. This was no human child. He was convinced the boy was offspring of the Jinn, and deep within Joseph, a long-dormant, secret desire stirred. The desire to meet these elusive beings, perhaps even to command one. Joseph knew the legends. He knew Jinn could potentially grant wishes, perform tasks beyond human capability. Though his intentions were initially framed by his faith, perhaps speeding along good deeds, the lure of such power was potent. One afternoon he approached the boy. "Son," he said, his voice low, "I wish to meet your parents. Bring them to me. I know what you are." The child stared, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes, then turned and left without a word. He never returned to Joseph's lessons. Joseph waited, inquired discreetly, tried to find where the boy lived, but it was as if he had vanished into thin air. The confirmation that the child was indeed Jinn-kind, coupled with his sudden disappearance, only inflamed Joseph's obsession. Driven by this consuming curiosity, Joseph resolved that the only way to make contact now was through the forbidden rite, the 40-night binding. He gathered information, consulted obscure texts, pieced together the dangerous methodology. He lived with his wife Mary and their 2 young children, Michael and Sarah. He chose a spare room on the top floor of their unassuming house. He informed Mary vaguely that he was undertaking a period of intense spiritual devotion and must not be disturbed under any circumstances, especially at night. He began to isolate himself, adhering to strict rules of purity, fasting from meat, dedicating himself entirely to the preparation. Then, the first night arrived. Joseph entered the chosen room, locked the door, meticulously drew the large circle of warding, reciting the ancient verses of protection. He then drew concentric circles within it, finally seating himself in the smallest central safe zone. The binding had begun. He knew the risks. The Jinn, it is said, despise being enslaved. They use their powers of illusion and terror to break the practitioner's will, to lure them from the safety of the ward. Failure, crossing that line before the 40 nights are complete, often means madness or death. Joseph steeled himself. 1 night passed, 2, 5, 10, 15 nights of silent, focused recitation within the circle. Nothing happened. Joseph felt no presence, saw nothing unusual, but he persisted, unwavering. Then, on the 16th night, it began. Faint laughter echoed in the sealed room. Sometimes a child's giggle, sometimes a man's chuckle, sometimes a woman's cruel tittering. Joseph's focus wavered, but he recognized the Jinn's first salvo. He ignored the sounds. Then came the knocking at the door. Soft at first, then more insistent. A voice whispered from the other side, laced with concern. "Joseph, honey, what are you doing in there all alone? It's so late." It was Mary's voice. Joseph's heart lurched, but his research had warned him of such deceptions. They were testing him. He remained seated, intensifying his prayers. He felt a thrill of fear, but also validation. They were here. From then on, each night brought new horrors. Visions flickered at the edge of his perception. One night, a terrifying family of Jinn seemed to stand just beyond his circle, their visages monstrous, radiating pure malice. He refused to look away, reciting his verses louder. Objects appeared to fall from the ceiling, stopping just short of his ward. The room itself seemed to twist and spin around him. On the 28th night, the room filled with the spectral forms of 3 enormous snarling dogs, their eyes glowing red, saliva dripping from spectral jaws as they circled his protective barrier, looking ready to pounce. Joseph trembled, sweat beading on his brow, but held firm, his faith in the ward his only shield. He gritted his teeth, continuing the ancient words. He would not break. The 35th night, deep in his meditative state, Joseph heard the distinct creak of the room door opening. He looked up, his blood running cold. Standing in the doorway, then stumbling forward, was Mary, but she was horrifically injured. Blood streamed from a gash on her head. Her clothes were torn. One arm hung limp and mangled. She collapsed just outside his circle, gasping. "Joseph, help me," she choked out. They found us. The Jinn. They'll kill us all. Please." Joseph stared, horrified. It looked so real. The smell of blood seemed to fill the air. Was this an illusion? Or had the Jinn somehow bypassed his precautions and attacked his family? Doubt gnawed at him, a cold serpent in his gut. He remained frozen, chanting, though his voice now shook. Suddenly, 2 small figures were flung violently into the room, landing in limp heaps beside the spectral Mary, Michael, and Sarah, both covered in blood, their eyes wide with terror, then fluttering closed. Joseph's breath hitched. His children. A strangled sob escaped him. This couldn't be an illusion. It felt too real, too cruel. Then, a towering shadow detached itself from the darkness by the door. A Jinn, tall and menacing, holding a wickedly curved dagger, glinting in the dim light. It glided towards his children. It bent down, grabbed Sarah by the hair, lifting her head. Her eyes flickered open, locking with Joseph's in silent, desperate appeal. The Jinn placed the dagger's edge against her small throat. "Break the circle, mortal." A voice like grinding stones echoed in the room, though the Jinn's mouth did not move. "Or the girl dies." Joseph watched, paralyzed by terror and indecision. His daughter's eyes pleaded with him. The Jinn pressed the blade slightly. A thin line of crimson appeared on Sarah's neck. Blood. Real blood. That was it. Illusion or not, the sight of his daughter's blood shattered Joseph's resolve. "No!" he screamed, scrambling to his feet. "Leave her alone! Take me!" He lunged forward, crossing the boundary of the circle of warding. In an instant, everything vanished. The blood, the bodies, Mary, his children, the menacing Jinn, all gone. The room was empty, silent, save for his own ragged breaths. He stood there trembling outside the broken circle. He understood immediately. He had failed. He had broken the binding on the 35th night, and now he was unprotected. Before he could even process the relief and the dread warring within him, the room plunged into an unnatural darkness. Shapes gathered before him, 3 indistinct figures radiating cold malice. The Jinn. Joseph froze, expecting death. "We will not grant you the release of death, mortal." The grating voice returned, seeming to come from all around him. "You sought to bind us. Instead, we shall bind you to a life worse than hell." And then they were gone. The oppressive presence lifted. Joseph stumbled out of the room, down the stairs, finding his wife and children sleeping soundly, unharmed. Relief washed over him, so potent it almost masked the lingering terror. He had failed the ritual, but he was alive. His family was safe. He thanked God for his deliverance, believing the worst was over. He was wrong. The next morning, Joseph awoke to agony. A deep, searing pain radiated from every joint in his body. His hands, his elbows, his knees, his back, his neck. It was excruciating, unbearable. Mary, alarmed, rushed him to the hospital. Doctors were baffled. There were no external injuries, yet the pain was crippling. X-rays provided a horrifying answer. Dozens of small, sharp objects, like nails or pins, were embedded deep within his body, clustered around the joints. There were no entry wounds, no explanation for how they got there. Emergency surgery was performed. The objects were painstakingly removed. Joseph felt some relief. But the next day, the agony returned, worse than before. New x-rays showed the impossible. The nails were back, exactly where they had been. They operated again, and again, the objects returned. Doctors, specialists, even spiritual healers sought through desperation. None could help him. The Jinn kept their promise. Joseph lived his remaining days in unrelenting torment, his body a prison of inexplicable pain. He died not long after, a broken man, his demise slow and agonizing. A cautionary tale whispered in the dark, a testament to the terrifying price of forbidden ambition, of attempting to control forces far beyond mortal comprehension. We are left to wonder, had you been in that room on that 35th night, staring at the spectral image of your loved ones under a Jinn's blade, could you have distinguished reality from illusion? Could you have resisted where Joseph failed? What would you have done? Tell us in the comments below. Until next time, tread carefully in the shadows.